Hey David, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Do I call you Dr. Amos or Michael or what do I call you?
You can call me whatever you like. Either one's fine. Michael, Dr. Michael, does
All
not
right.
matter.
Thank you, Michael. I'm really glad to be here. Thank you for your interest.
Well, I really appreciate this book that you've written, The Genius in All of Us. And the reason why I was excited to talk to you is because I think this book really captivates the next direction that we need to go as far as human potential and development. And so I was taken aback. I was blown away by the GXE concept that you were talking about, because that's
Mm-hmm.
quite different from what what I learned growing up in school. And I remember a lot of
Yeah.
times, people would make decisions on like what they were going to do in life, their career, that kind of thing, based off of, well, I don't know if I'm smart enough. I don't know if I'm tall enough to be a basketball player. Just things like that. And what I started to think about was how limiting things have been as far as the science has been in some respects, as far as genes, the intelligence tests and things like that. We focus more, I feel like, on less on human capabilities and more on limitations.
Yes, I agree with you.
So
Um, and I'm glad the book resonated with you. I all I did was put together a lot of different science that I saw from a couple of different areas that I thought needed more attention. And one of the problems is that science and technology and all subjects have become so specialized that often the experts on something know something, but it never really gets out to the rest of the world. So
you're right.
one of the great things about being a writer about science or technology or any subject is that you get to be that bridge between the science or the specialized subject and the rest of the world. And so that's my job, is to try to go into a specialized area and get this information out to people who don't happen to be in that world.
And I actually think that's a really good thing, because one of the things, like, these are not easy topics to talk about or to really understand. There's a lot of complexity. So there's the fact that you were able to break it down in more of a simpler way for people to understand it. Just, I think that's what made this so powerful. And whoever reads the book, it's going to resonate with them because of how you describe, the concepts in it. I
Thank
really
you.
love
Well,
this book.
I, I also on the question of writing, my life's goal has been to write great nonfiction, and I'm not saying that I have done that, but that is my ambition. And I try to follow in the footsteps of people like John McPhee and Joan Didion and Tom Wolfe and a lot of other people who kind of reinvented the nonfiction literary genre in the 60s and 70s. And I believe that nonfiction is as high an art form as music or fiction or painting or any form there is, any genre. And so part of the there are a couple different things you want to do when you're writing nonfiction, but one of them, way up there, is clarity. You want to be as clear as possible and engaging, and you really I spend an awful lot of time going over my sentences and my paragraphs, and making sure that I'm not leaving anyone behind. That's really, really key. Is just everything should be clear. You don't want to dumb it down. You want to
Right.
give people big ideas, and you want to challenge them with important information and things like that. But you don't want to leave confusion. So literally word by word, sentence by sentence, you want to make sure that anyone can follow, as long as they can read and process information. And I spent a lot of time making sure that you might be bored with the subject, and that's fine, or you might not like my style or whatever it is, but you're not going to put the book down because you're confused.
Wow, That's a good point, and obviously you've done pretty well with your books because I mean you're award-winning national best-selling author of 6 books, so there must be some clarity to the to the information that you're writing. So you're doing it. You've done a fine job. I,
Yeah, I'm very, thank you. I'm very lucky, and yeah, I have I've had this goal for a long time, and it's worked out. There's behind those 6 books are a lot of books that didn't work out. When you have a little bit of success, and you also get to know other people who are successful, whether they're famous actors or musicians or artists or politicians or whatever, you end up realizing that the stuff that people see as the successful part, which looks like a whole life of success often,
mm-hmm.
That's just kind of the tip of the iceberg of all the stuff, of all the struggles that happened beneath that. And there's behind, underneath the water there, to stay with the metaphor, there's tons of stuff that didn't happen well, failures and disappointments and attempts and of course, a lot of people don't want to talk about that. If you're interviewing a famous actor and you're saying, aren't you the great actor? You've won an Oscar for this, this amazing movie, and they don't want to say, well, I'm actually, a failure who's done all these things wrong. So they just kind of tend to want to, bask in the glow of this famous, achievement. But trust me, every single one of those people, and me included, to whatever extent the success I've had, there's just so much struggling and failure and disappointments behind that, and the people who end up achieving whatever they achieve are just the people who decide that they're not going to get they're not going to get turned away by these disappointments. They're going to kind of double down and just keep doing the thing that they love and trust somehow that it's going to work out.
Kind of along the lines of the concept of grit, perseverance over time, which I like that book. But the reason why I like your book so much is because I think that the way that you explain the gene concept or genes really it illuminates the rest of the work of everyone else, like Kay Anders Erickson, Angela Duckworth, all the individuals that are focusing on, just looking at human potential at this point. And it just, I think that was another thing that really resonated with me. It helped me put things into a really good perspective from that, from that vantage point. It was really
I'm
good.
so glad to hear that. I'm so glad to hear that. I know those people. I know Angela Duckworth. I know Anders Erickson and a bunch of other people. And Malcolm Gladwell's done some great writing in this area. There's so many. And it's interesting. When I started writing the book, I was I told you earlier that I wanted to be the bridge between the science and the outside world. But the truth is, at the same time, I was aware that this is a really complicated subject, and I was aware that there were other people trying to tell the same story. And while ordinarily a writer might be a little daunted by that and say, "Well, someone else is doing that. I'll do something else." In this case, the subject is so important and complicated that I realized that this is going to be not just one book, but a whole shelf of books, and they're still being written, that are going to help tell this very big story about how we have been thinking about intelligence in the wrong way, and talent in the wrong way, and potential in the wrong way. And it's going to take a whole generation, really, I think, and many, many good books to help people realize that there's a new way to think about this. So I see my own book, and this is maybe a little bit arrogant, but I see my own book as just being one small part of that, of these other books that you mentioned, and that are telling the story. And I think they're very complementary. There's Angela Duckworth doing honing in on the science of grit. And there's Anders Ericsson, who has helped to pioneer the whole concept of
Expertise.
Expertise and the type of practice that you need to do, kind of distinguishing the types of effort that you need to do, and helping people understand what leads to success and what doesn't. And there's going to be a lot more of that, and there already are, a lot of great books that are telling, slivers of this important story.
One thing I thought was, to piggyback off what you're saying, one thing that I also did was you're doing some things in Iowa, which the introduction, you probably can't see that, but the introduction to the collection, how we develop, that's fascinating. And it kind of, I can see what you mean by telling a bigger story, because from from just my research and what I was looking at, you've got multidisciplinary people involved in this process. And I know that it's already finished, right? But how can where could we go to get access to this information?
Yeah, so there's you've really done your homework. I appreciate that. There's so after my book came out, when I was doing my publicity rounds, I got invited to come to the University of Iowa, and actually I already knew about these guys, but I didn't realize to what extent they were already kind of on this train. There's a whole group of amazing academic psychologists at the University of Iowa, based at the University of Iowa, but it's really a network of academics all over the world who are trying to tell the same developmental story. That's a kind of another way of describing this story, is that we're moving from a place of kind of getting rid of, busting through the myth of innateness, and talking about how all of life is developmental. And there's a whole biology to that, and there's a whole psychology to that. And these academics are looking at a lot of different threads of science, and some of it very hardcore and complex science. And they're seeing that all of the science is telling the same story, and so they formed this network of people. And so I teamed up with two of the leaders of this group, John Spencer and Mark Blumberg, and at Iowa. John has actually since moved over to a different institution in the UK. But the three of us spent several years organizing a collection of writing by other academics, basically, who usually work in the very the very specialized confines of their academic discipline. But our whole goal was, we're going to get you to try to write something that we can work together to make accessible to the public.
Right.
And so in a way, I see this as very much a sequel to this book. Even though it's a very different kind of book, it's a collection of articles by scientists, essentially, about their discipline, talking about the developmental model and pointing out some of the great science that has helped them to rethink the way they do their work. And I don't know the URL in my head, but we'll make sure that you've got a URL to go to. It's a couple months ago, we released it through Wiley, the academic publisher, and it's kind of like an online book. It's a series of articles or chapters by different people. All of them are great, really important academics in their respective fields, and they were all super patient with us. They worked for free. We worked for virtually free. There was if I told you what I got paid an hour, I think it comes down to I think I could make more, weaving carpets in those illegal factories in India or something. It took us years and years to do this right, but we all, this was kind of one of those labors of love, and we spent years and years organizing this really terrific body of work, and it's called How We Develop, and we'll get you a link, and
I'll put it on the website.
It's all
as well.
very accessible. Right, yeah, I'm super proud to be a part of that.
That sounds really exciting. I can't wait to just check it out and get a better idea of things, because I'm sure it's something that I could utilize with coaching people, or just helping people realize their potential. I like also how you talk about latent potential, the fact that we don't really reach our potential, and I think a lot of it has to do with we just don't know how to tap into it. For most of us, we've
Yeah,
never pushed
yeah,
ourselves.
yeah. That's right. Here's how I talk about potential. First of all, um, we need to rethink potential, because potential, I think, um, we think of it as all of us having a certain amount of potential, and we think of things that happen in our lives as somehow showing us that potential. Like, if it wasn't until I got on the soccer field that I realized that I have great potential as a soccer player, or it wasn't until I found this great science teacher that I realized I had potential as a scientist. And we think of people like, we've been told for our whole lives that potential is this certain amount of stuff that we have that's kind of in us. And some of us have potential over here, and others have potential over here. And, we all have some potential, but we need to discover what it is and then pursue that. And I think that's not quite true. I think that the potential is immense, but the potential is built into our biological design, all of us. The potential is that we are incredible developing creatures, and we are designed in several different ways. The design of our brains, the design of our genes and how they interact with the environment, the design of our bodies over hundreds of millions and billions of years. We are all a part of this design that is able to adapt to challenges and to ambitions and to failure and to different environments in this extraordinary way, and also to build on top of the information and intelligence and accomplishments of our peers and our predecessors. And it's just immense what human beings are capable of.
It
And
is.
sure, different people have different capabilities, but we focus too much on the different capabilities, because the bottom line for potential, as far as I can tell, is that none of us know our potential. And here's the key part: none of us ever will know our potential.
Hmm.
Ever. I have no idea what my potential is. All I can do is pursue the things that I love to do, learn about how to learn from my mistakes, to go after the things that I want to go after, to pick myself off the floor after I fall down every day, and I know how to get better at what I want to do.
That's huge.
Over time. And I'm not going to know so let's just take my writing, for example, just as a concrete example. I don't feel like I've discovered what I've been writing, professionally nonfiction for, almost 30 years. And so you might think, oh, he's 51 years old, so he knows that and he's published some books and they've gotten good reviews, so he knows that he's reached his potential as a writer. I have no idea what my potential is as a writer. I know what I've been able to do so far. I know that if I decide to spend the next 30 years as a nonfiction writer, and I keep pushing myself, and that depending on the direction that I take and the decisions I make, that I'm going to keep getting better. I'm going to keep accomplishing things. I don't know how great I can be. I don't know if I can be the best writer who ever lived, or better than that, or the second best, or even what that means. All I know is that I can keep getting better and better. And I'm not just, this isn't like a religion to me. I'm saying this is what science tells us.
Sure.
I don't know what my potential is. All I know is to keep getting better. And you see, I'm still struggling with how to talk about this, because we we don't really talk about this in the right way yet, but what we don't know is our actual potential. We just know how to push towards that potential. And that science tells us, and experience, that if you look at people, and there are just so many people who have done this now, in terms of accomplishments, if you look at people's lives and you look at people who want to achieve things and who are relentless in pursuing the things that they love to do, and how they've learned how to keep achieving and how to keep improving and never settle for where they are. Science tells us that the potential is really extraordinary, and that we don't ever really see it. The last breath we take in our lives, we know what we are capable of up to that moment, and that's all we know. If we're able to live another 100 years in a healthy way, the potential would keep going. Every day is potential. And I know that can kind of sound new agey, but really it's not. It's what we've learned from the science of achievement and the science of how we were all designed.
I don't think it's new agey either, because I think, and you reference practice, deliberate practice being
right,
a key component. I think if anybody focuses their mind on developing more mastery over something, and they find passion, they find enjoyment in it, they can go forever on that. And maybe they're not focused on what's going to happen at the end, because maybe that doesn't matter to them, just as long as they keep growing. And that's what it sounds like you're basically saying. Like, no matter, you may write 1 million books, maybe you might write 500, hypothetically, you may write a lot.
Yeah.
The point is, you're doing something you love. And every day you're focusing on practicing, getting better at it. And however the chips lay, they lay. You had no idea how things were going to end up. You just kept pushing forward. Is that what you're basically saying?
That's right. And I think that we're under, there's a lot of myth around this, and there's a lot of misunderstandings, but a lot of times we see people who are exceptional at what they do, and and we think we're all humans. We all have the same thought. I could never do that in 1 million years. Those things that look like amazing hidden talents in other people are really the development of many. It's the accretion of many skills. It's like building an anthill up to Mount Everest, just one grain at a time. And some people have the wherewithal and the time and the resources and the motivation and the attitude to build that hill higher than the rest of us. I think it is helpful to understand, even though it's not all within our power and control, it's helpful to understand that in the end, if you scratch away all the kind of myths of talent and otherness, it really is, all this stuff is collection of skills. Even intelligence, someone who's super smart, that's a collection of different skills that they've built up over time in a certain arena, in a certain subject matter, a certain way of thinking, with certain teachers and certain schools, certain environments, and they've built up this amazing intelligence. That doesn't mean that your brain wasn't capable of building up something just like that or even greater.
Sure. It's just a difference in what you're saying. It's just what you choose to focus on. And then the limitation, the biggest limitation I got from what you're saying is the limitation of time, that learning curve, time to learn that, and the desire to even want to learn it in the first place.
There are limitations in our lives. It's not like we each have the exact amount of control, and there are things that limit our potential, but the things that limit our potential tend to be either in our mind in terms of our attitudes, or external influences and limitations on our lives and our resources. They don't tend to be these biological talent, innate, limitations that we were brought up to think about. And as you say in my book, the first thing I do, the first chapter, literally, is helping people understand how we've been thinking about genes in this incorrect way, how we think about genes as having that innate potential and that innate direction. And it's really much more interesting than that.
Do you think that the traditional view of talent and genes has kind of diverted the life purpose of like many people in our society, like the way that the careers that they choose, the direction that they go? Like, do you think that it's affected them in some way or affected our choices as a society?
I do. I think a lot of people decide early on that they're limited. This is going back to something we talked about earlier, but I think a lot of people are taught and also decide for themselves early on that they're just not going to be good at certain things, and so they shouldn't waste their time doing that thing. And I think that's okay if they're not into that thing. It's not, I'm not,
Right.
you know, I mean, we all have to make choices. And I never, there wasn't a day in my life where I ever looked at basketball and I was like, I want to be great at that. I never had that moment. And that's funny because I'm only 9, or not quite 5'9", but I tell my kids I'm 5'9". And, you know, so I'm a short guy and obviously to be great at basketball. But you know what? 75 years ago, there are all these short Jewish guys actually who were great at basketball. That's another funny thing about basketball is that at one point it was actually dominated by not so tall Jewish guys. It's kind of funny. You know, today we think of it as being dominated by this whole, you know, and as far as either one of us know, in 20 years, there might be shorter guys playing basketball who
You never
somehow
know.
figure out a way to like make being tall a disadvantage. You know, they're like passing, you know, they're taking advantage of their different body types. You know, someone could reinvent basketball who's like 5'2", and who knows? Who knows? All I'm saying is, for me, I never had that moment. So, but there are a lot of kids out there, you know, whether they're 2 years old, 5 years old, 10, 15, whatever it is, who they're like, boy, I wish I could be good at that, but I can't, you know, because so-and-so says I'm no good, or I got cut from the team, or I didn't get picked to be on, you know, I didn't get picked by my peers to be playing, you know, on this after school team, or my dad says that I'd be better off, you know, doing this other thing and not wasting my time. There's just all kinds of messages that I think, or we take a test and say, hey, you know, you're not so good at this thing. Like I actually, in high school, we took these tests called GATB tests, GATB, that I still remember because it was all about saying the stuff you're not going to be good at. I'm so upset about it still. I was just cursing it to my wife a couple days ago. And I got this thing back saying, you are never going to be a surgeon. Don't even think about it.
Oh,
because
man.
I didn't put the pegs in the right holes fast enough at age 14 or whatever it was. Now, yeah, at that time, I'm sure there were people in my classroom who were putting pegs in holes faster. And so they're going to be, so some piece of paper says they're going to be great surgeons. I mean, what a bunch of malarkey.
I agree.
If I wanted to be a great surgeon and some test was telling me at age 14 that I'm not going to be a surgeon and I'd be better off doing this other thing, that makes me so angry, because that is just not what science tells us. Science tells us you pursue the thing you love, that you want to be great at, and you find a way to be great at it, and you never give up, and you are going to be really extraordinary. You are going to make a contribution if you just keep going and going and going. And I don't mean it in an arrogant way, but if I had decided, you know, the day that I got my GATB test back that I was going to be the best brain surgeon that ever lived, you'd be interviewing me right now about brain surgery, you know, because I just would have spent 30 years not giving up. And if I wasn't making money at it, or I wasn't getting hired at it, I would have figured out a way to invent surgery in a new way that could make me good at it. Maybe I'd invent a machine that did it instead of my fingers. I'm not trying to say that I'm, you know, arrogant, that I'm just good at stuff and you're not. I'm trying to say it's a process for all of us to get there. And if we have the right mindset and we put enough into it, that's the secret. And I hate it, to go back to your question, I hate it when kids get messages that they take into their adult lives that, yeah, I'm just not going to be good at that, and that's just the way it is. And sometimes they use that message to make themselves feel better about giving up.
Yep.
Right? They say, yeah, I was really into biking, but then I realized, I'm never going to win the Tour de France, so I moved on to something else. I don't care that you quit biking. That's fine. I don't care that you decide not to become a professional at it, or you decide you're never going to win, because you have to do incredible, crazy things to win the Tour de France. But and obviously only one person wins the Tour de France every year, and there's only going to be so many people that win it, so there are limitations up and down the spectrum there. But I don't like it that people say, I could never do this, and therefore I gave up at doing that thing. I think what they're really saying to themselves is either I don't love it that much that I want to keep doing it, or they're saying I don't like that feeling of being a failure, and so I'm going to go do this thing that makes me feel better. And again, that's also fine. But I think that at a certain level, even though a lot of these things are beyond our control, the more we understand that it is about skills and about choices we make about what we want to pursue, at least if we have that freedom, I think that's a very empowering thing. And to kind of own your own failure. Like in my case, I'm not a brain surgeon. I'm never going to be a brain surgeon. That's not because some test told me I can't be a brain surgeon. It's not because I don't have the fingers to be a brain surgeon. They're kind of short and stubby, and I'm clumsy. It's not because I was born with genes that keep me from being a brain surgeon. It's because I want a different direction in my life. Right. I'm fine with that. I love what I do. There are a lot of things I can't do because of the things that I can do. But I'm okay. I don't say to myself, or to my kids, yeah, I was never going to be a great skier. I was never going to be a great painter. I was never going to be a great, doctor. I was never going to be a great, there's a long list. I was never going to be a great this or that. So I went in this other direction. I say to my kids, I was lucky enough to find something that I love to do. I was lucky enough to find it pretty early on in my life, not just one thing, but a lot of things. And then I made some choices about what I was going to spend time at. And guess what? I became better at those things than the things I didn't spend time at. And you find something. I have conversations with parents all the time, and they're like, yeah, my kid, I just had a conversation with a good friend. Their kid wants to be a musician. The kid is 20 years old. And this is a good friend, and they've read my book and everything, and they're still telling me, yeah, and I'm worried about how they're going to make a living. And I'm like, there aren't a lot of people making a living at being a musician. And I'm just like, why are you saying that to your kid? You should just say, do what you love to do, and figure out how to make, how to put food on the table and pay your rent. But if you love doing that, man, pedal to the metal, do that. Just do it and do it and do it. And if 5 or 10 years from now, you're still not being very successful at it, but you still love doing it, push the pedal down harder. You know what I mean? Don't give up. You give up the day you're not interested in it anymore. That's fine. You might
or the day you down on the ground.
Yeah, exactly. You might do watercolors for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, and then just wake up and go, you know what? I'm a little bored by watercolors. It's not my thing. I'm just not interested. I don't love it. I don't wake up in the morning wanting to be a watercolor painter. So you move on with your life. That's fine. But if you do watercolors for 5 or 10 years and your goal was to be this, astounding, new watercolor person and change the world of watercoloring, and you're like, oh, you know what? I've been doing this for 7 years, and I'm just obviously not going to change the world, and I'm giving up because I've discovered my limits and my potential. isn't in watercoloring. That to me is so depressing, because I think those people are really getting the wrong message, and it may be comfortable for them at a certain point. They might be like, all right, they might like that idea that they found their limit and they don't have to try so hard. And that's also okay with. I don't mean to be the judge and jury of all these people, but I'm trying to say that it frustrates me when people get the wrong message. And now we have all this science out there that has the right message. And the amazing thing about the science, and you'll see this if you read my book, and if you read Angela Duckworth's book and Anders Ericsson's book and all those great books out there now. Talent is Overrated is another good book. The Talent Myth is another great one. There's there are dozens of them now. And the message is, no matter what part of science you study, it's all about the development and picking up these skills. And there's something, and we haven't even talked about the lesson of genes. Should we talk about that for just a minute before we finish up?
Right. I did want you to definitely talk about that.
Yeah. And for me, it all comes back. The whole message starts with an understanding of how genes work. So we were all taught. Usually, I start my interviews with this, and now we're maybe we're finishing with it. But we were all taught that genes have a certain amount of information. Like there's a gene that, to kind of make it a really simple lesson here. There's a gene that we each have that's going to determine our eye color. And there's pieces of information in a gene that you have and that I have that's like blue eyes, brown eyes, whatever, green eyes. And of course, and then from there, there are genes that are going to make us, that have information about whether we're going to be tall, short, fat, thin, happy, unhappy, all these things that are just kind of like the gene has the information that we're going to be athletic, or we're going to be musical, or we're not going to be those things. That is not how genes work. Genes have information, and that information then gets turned into proteins, which ends up being the building blocks of who we are. And all those things do influence enormously all the things that we do and everything that we are and everything that we become. But in order for those genes, the information, to get translated into those proteins, they need to be turned on and off by the outside world. Genes get turned on and off like switches. So starting from the first moment you are conceived, even way before you're born, you are this bundle of genes, and there's this environment outside you. And in the case of being in the womb, obviously it is nutrition and sounds and your mom's heart rate, and there are thousands of little data inputs that are coming in and that are affecting you when you're in the womb. And each one of those things is, your genes are sitting there going, oh, I'll turn on, I'll turn off, I'll turn on, I'll turn off. And you're even from the first moment of being conceived, your genes are responding to the environment and making you a unique person that is adapting to that environment. And that's the way we're built.
It's a symbiotic relationship.
That's right. That's right. So, you could have Albert Einstein, and you could have his exact genetic makeup in a different kid. If you could theoretically clone him, which we will be able to do shortly, you could put him in a different womb, in a different country, in a different time, with different nutrition, different sounds. The mom has a different attitude towards life. She's active in a different way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then the kid is born. There's different language. There's a different set of ideas. That person is not going to be Albert Einstein, folks. They're not going to have the same crazy hair. They're not going to have the same great idea, insane ideas. They might have different insane great ideas. They might change the world in a different way. But I can guarantee you that person is going to be male. There are certain things we can say. Obviously, genes, that person's not going to be female. there probably is going to be actually a strong resemblance to Einstein at certain points in his life. But even that is amazing. You know, we tend to think of identical twins as looking just like each other because of their genes, but it's not just because of their genes. It's two people who've had the same genes and virtually the same 9 months of gene environment interaction, even before they're born. And that sets into place this path that they can only be so different, at least in how they look. They can still become quite different people, but there are a lot of the similarities we see, which we think of as being connected just to the genes. It's the GXE. It's the genes getting turned on and off like switches by the environments. And once you learn to think about, first of all, once you learn about genes in this different way, and then you realize that what is intelligence? Intelligence is a lot of different skills. It's being able to be curious about new ideas. It's being able to process visual stimuli. It's being able to remember things. It's thousands of different things. And there are genes that influence all those little, abilities in your brain. But they're little skills that we build up. And yeah, there are genes that are helping us build those things. But once we realize that the key thing is turning those genes on and off and using the environment to do that, it's not just relying on the genes we have to be smart at something or to not be smart at something. And you realize that life is this interactive process biologically. In the same way that your brain grows and changes with every moment of experience, your whole body, everything about you you are a creature of your environment. The environment you were born into, the environment you make yourself with your own choices, the environment you're going to go pick today by when you walk out your door, going to the left or the right, or choosing to eat that turkey sandwich or that ham sandwich. Every little thing is going to change how the switches are getting turned on and off in your brain. And there's a lot of those choices we don't understand. Like, I don't understand how feeding oatmeal to my kid or Cheerios to my kid when they're 5 years old, like how that's going to affect their intelligence. I have no idea. I'm not an expert in that. But we're going to be learning about that. We're all going to be learning about that. And there are things we do know, like the things we talked about how to respond to failure, that we can understand. And so the more we understand about how we can control our own environments and affect our own environments, and that we are creatures of our own environment, not just, the day we're born, but every day that we live, I think that's a really empowering thing. It also just happens to be true. So even if you don't like it, it's true. It's something you need to face up to. And like I was saying earlier, like, you might love who you are and you might want to stay the same person, but Michael Amos is not going to be the same person 5 years from now.
No.
You're going to be a different person, and you get to decide, you get to have some control over who that person becomes. Who are you going to spend time with? What books are you going to read? What food are you going to eat? What exercise are you going to take? How much sleep are you going to get? What city are you going to live in? What TV are you going to watch? All those are things you get to decide about the person you are becoming. What things do you want to remember from your past, and what things do you just not want to think about anymore? What friends do you want to hang out with? All of these things are things that are going to shape who you become. And, if we were talking and we were both 85 years old, I'd be saying the same thing. That 85-year-old, they're going to be someone different when they're 90. Yeah, we might not be able to see the differences because they seem like the same person, but they're still changing. They're still changing every day until they die. And that's cool, right? That's exciting.
That is exciting.
I think.
No, I'm totally with you. I think that's the most amazing thing about life, that we have a choice. We have a choice.
Right.
We have a choice in how we choose to live. And I think, and I think at the end of the day, that's really on a bigger scale, that's another thing that you really talk about. So my last question for you, what are the 3 things that you want people to take away? What are the 3 most important things, just real quickly, you think that you personally want people to take away from this book?
Oh boy. All right. Well, when I get to as soon as I say the third thing, I'm going to wish I said something else. But let's see. I'd say the first thing is that genes do not make us on their own. That genes influence everything we do, but only in this interactive way that we talked about. The genes are more like switches and knobs that get turned on and off by our environment. So that's one thing. You can't really go on to the other stuff without realizing that there's this kind of interactive, adaptive biology that we all have. The second thing is that the way we talk about talent as being this innate quality that each of us has, and we just need to kind of uncover what it is that we're born to do or whatever. That's just not true. I don't care how many people have said it to you. It's just not true. And it's not a matter of discovering what you were meant to be. It's a matter of becoming who you are. That who you are going to be is a matter of your own development. And that's a process. It's not a thing that you have. And I guess the third thing would be that that if you love something and you want to be good at it, you want to be great at it, you should keep doing that thing, no matter what anyone says. If you can afford to do it, if you can find time to do it, whether it's your profession or just your hobby or whatever you want to call it, at no point, if you still love doing it 2 years from now, 10 years from now, 30 years from now, keep doing it. And do it for the love of doing it. And what you're going to discover is you get pretty darn good at it because of that love and because you want to get better at it. And you will fail. I'm sneaking in a fourth thing, but it's part of number 3. You will fail all the time at whatever you're loving to do. And it doesn't matter how great you get, you're pushing yourself and you're going to find new ways to fail at that thing you love. But if you keep doing it because you love to do it, you're going to still get better and better. And if that, as long as that love continues, then just be relentless. And one day you're going to wake up and people are going to be saying, you know, that crazy thing that you've been doing for all these years that just look weird to the rest of us. Well, that turns out to be a pretty useful skill, or it's pretty amazing that you can get up on that unicycle and be like the unicycle guy. You know, look kind of weird when you're falling down all the time and hitting your head. But now that you can do it and you're the best of the world, you know, at it, it's pretty impressive. So, you know, so we celebrate. It's a weird world we live in because we celebrate greatness. We see people today every day who get rich and famous and are in commercials and are, you know, selling millions of albums and all that. We celebrate them for their being great, but at the same time, we tell ourselves that we can't be great and that they're just some kind of freaks of nature. And that's not true. They got great because of a process. And if you want to be great at something, you decide what it is and you go pursue that process and just never stop. Never, ever, ever stop.
Thank you for the fourth one, or the third one with the little bit of the fourth within it.
Yeah.
That was the best one. That was the best one.
Okay.
Thank you so much for taking your precious time to talk to me today. And I'm going to make sure that all my students know more about this book and anybody else that I talk to. And you know what? Just keep doing what you're doing because it's making a difference in the world. So thank you.